Hello there, and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with community experts about their life journeys and how they came into the community world. So today we have a conversation with Carrie Melissa Jones, the one who could jump on and ride a horse without a saddle, a founding partner of the CMX community, and author of the first community book I've ever read, Building Brand Community. So hello, Carrie.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. And I actually can ride a horse without a saddle. Did you know that?
Yeah,
I mentioned
definitely. And
that.
I will definitely ask you more. But the first question, do you like cats?
I do. They're not my favorite animal, but I like cats. Yes. I like dogs better.
Yeah, and it's the next question. How did you decide to get Bruce?
Oh my gosh. Um, Already with the great questions. How did I decide? Well, um, honestly, I was in a very bad place in my life. And I was on medical leave from one of my first community manager jobs. And, I was on medical leave because I was burnt out and having panic attacks at work and just not really sure what was going on. My mental health was really suffering. And I think there was a adoption fair up the street from where I was living in San Francisco. And I walked into the SPCA, the animal care facility, and there were a bunch of dogs there, but I saw Bruce and his little face. He has these giant bat ears, and really these big round eyes, and he's like 15 pounds. And I just thought, I'm not getting this dog as a way to fix myself. But if I can focus on something outside of myself, then maybe that will be very healing. And I had no idea. I've never had a dog in my life. So Bruce he's the best little pup. He's very needy and very anxious, but it's been really nice to have something to take care of throughout these years. So he's seen a lot and been through a lot with me.
But was it a love from the first sight?
Yes. There were all these dogs around him, and they were all barking. And, I lived in an apartment in San Francisco, and I was really worried about leaving him, when I had to go to work. And there was just this little dog in the corner being completely quiet, just sitting there. I could kind of see in his face that he was thinking, what is wrong with all these other dogs? Why don't they calm down? And so yeah, they actually, because he was under, I think, 25 pounds, he was free. They gave him to me for free. And I just had to pay for his license. And yeah. So, yes.
Oh, because, I know a lot about Bruce. So that's why I'm asking to get to know even him better.
He's a great dog.
Okay, so do you have some funny story with him that you can share?
Funny stories of my dog. There's so many. I mean, I will say this is not funny, but the story of how I almost lost him. No, I do have a very funny story. Let me do this one. I'll just preface this by saying that, like I said earlier, he's very anxious and is very attached and loyal to one person. He's got a mini pincher in him. And so he's got that Doberman pincher loyal vibe. And so with my now husband, we went on a week-long backpacking trip in the Sierra Nevadas in California one summer. And so I left Bruce with my mother thinking, she'll take care of him. She's not incompetent, but she's never had a dog in her life either. And I should have given her a little bit more instructions than I did. And I don't know why she thought this was a good idea, but she brought him to a cafe on a busy street near San Francisco. We lived about 20 minutes south of San Francisco. And she tied him to a little kind of chair that was metal. So thinking that he couldn't move the chair. And then she went inside of the cafe to order herself a crepe. And when she came, well, actually, she was waiting in line, and then she heard a scream from outside. And then the sound of a chair moving, screeching across the sidewalk. And Bruce had gotten so nervous and so anxious, and people don't realize that you should leave a dog. Like, don't come up to a dog that is really nervous and anxious like that. And so they tried to come and like comfort him because he's so cute. And and he freaked out, and then he took off down the street. He carried the chair down a block. He so this chair ended up way far away, and then he disappeared with like his touch to his leash, but he disappeared and he was gone for hours. My mom actually, like, there were neighbors coming out to help look for him. My mom ended up getting in the car with the police so they could drive around the town and see if they could find him. And my mother, being my mother, and this is, a long story, but she gave up at one point and just said, I'm going to go back to the restaurant and I'm going to get my crepe and then I'll figure this out. Just my mother to a T. And so she did that. And then she brought the crepe home, and Bruce was sitting in the backyard. So he had found his way across like multiple busy streets. And, this was my parents' home. It wasn't where I even lived. He had found his way home and was just sitting in the backyard, just like nothing happened.
Like, what's going on? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So, he's done that in San Francisco before too. There's a big street in San Francisco called Van Ness, very busy, lots of traffic, and he's run across it by himself multiple times. Just like he got out of my apartment. I've learned over the years how to keep him kind of contained, and his recall is now much better. So that's good.
Yeah, it's like both funny and scary stories. So
it was so scary at the time. I mean, I wasn't there. I was in the woods, in the forest. When my mom did that, but the other times were very, very scary. I was very scared. I was like, how have I failed this dog? I have to do better. So
totally understand you. That's all the parents problems, That's how it works.
I love them, but they're people, they're humans. They're humans.
Sure. I have two of them, so I totally understand you. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Tell me a little about your parents. How did they met?
Oh my goodness. My parents met in Tennessee. So my family is from East Tennessee, and they went to college together. And I think my parents met at a bar or something at near their university. And as my father tells it, he wasn't used to talking with intelligent women. He was used to hanging out at bars and playing pool, and my mother was talking to him about William Faulkner and a great American author and these other books. And my dad was enamored by this. He had just come back he actually was in Vietnam, and came back from Vietnam and was like, wow, this woman is just so smart. And then they dated for several years, I believe, and then got married and had kids several years after that. So, yeah.
So kids, so you are not alone. I know that you are not alone, but tell me please about your brother.
Mm-hmm. I have two brothers, actually, two older brothers. So I'm the youngest of three. One of my brothers is 8 years older than me, and then the other one is 2 years older than me. So there's a big age difference between my oldest brother and me that I felt growing up, but now it seems like we're the same age. Yeah. And he actually was born in Tennessee, and my brother and I were born in Atlanta, Georgia, when my parents moved.
And how was your relationships with brother? Did you felt like safe, or how it was in general?
Yeah. So my brothers are such special people. My oldest brother, definitely, he is a musician. He's an incredible musician, singer, songwriter, guitar. He could play it. He could pick up any instrument and play it. And so there was a lot of creativity in my home growing up, and always music playing. And my middle brother is so special. He had a really hard time in high school, and it was hard to look at my older brother struggle so much with his mental health. And that really left an impression on me. He almost, we almost lost him twice. And so like mental health and this feeling of loneliness is really close to me and my family story. But now my brother he's a very different person. He's like all love. And growing up, like he would not fight with me because he learned the word pacifist somehow, which I don't know. Do you know this word, pacifist?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm peaceful. I don't do anything. And so he would just kind of like let me smack at him, and like he's just like such a peaceful person. But we ended up going to college together, and then he was just 2 years ahead of me, and then he actually he lived in Tanzania. He lived in China, Japan, Taiwan for many years. Has been all over the world. Now lives in the Dominican Republic, and knows like 5 languages. And he's so smart. Growing up, he knew like the scientific names of dinosaurs, like all the different dinosaurs. He would look at books and memorize things. And so just a very smart individual. So, yeah.
So that is the person because of who you learned Chinese.
Yeah, actually, I was going to visit him in Taiwan, and then the pandemic happened. Actually, this was at the beginning of the pandemic. I started to learn it. I wanted to learn Chinese and be able to visit Taiwan. And there's obviously simplified Chinese and then traditional Chinese. And I didn't realize that at the time. And so I signed up for the traditional Chinese because that's what they write in Taiwan. And it was so difficult. It was the most humbling experience probably of my life to try to learn Chinese. So humbling. It's, yeah, so difficult.
Are you still into that?
Learning Chinese?
Yeah.
Yes, I have a couple of people in my life who I practice with, but my Chinese is not. It's something that if I had picked it up in childhood, I think I could have learned quickly. It's like music, it's a tonal language, and so kind of learning the different tones and all of that requires a musical ear. And not that I don't have that, because again, my family is very musical, but it's hard to pick it up later in life. And then learning the characters and writing them is a whole separate thing. They don't have no relation necessarily to the sounds of the words and any of that. So
yeah.
It's, yeah, I could get around in like a Chinese restaurant or, not that impressive.
I totally understand you because I learned Japanese when I was a kid, but I definitely not remember anything of it. So it was like a good thing to tell everyone. So
yeah. I bet you could pick it up pretty quickly, especially because you learned it as a kid, if you were surrounded by it.
Yeah, definitely. So you told that your family is rather musical. So you told about your brothers. So what about your father and mother? How they are connected to the music?
Yeah, so my family, going back multiple generations, on my father's side, they're Appalachian people, so mountain people in East Tennessee, which, as my mother would lovingly call them, rednecks. And music was always part of that culture. It's my parents both grew up about 20 minutes, actually, no, about an hour from where Dolly Parton was born and grew up and spent most of her child life. And so just like dobros and fiddles and mandolins and banjos, like there was always instruments going on. My father tried to teach himself the violin when I was in high school. Dad, please stop. But my aunt is an opera singer. She's a classically trained opera singer. And like I said, my brother is a kind of Americana musician and just has like a beautiful voice. And I can sing. I don't do it very often, but yeah. And it's also is tied to like a long spiritual tradition, on my in my family as well. So yeah.
I really enjoy the song of your brother. So I found it and it was like, yeah, he has really amazing voice. And That's exactly the song was. Just give me a second.
Was it the one with the music video? Like,
Yeah, with ashes in
yeah.
the ashes of his best friend's home, and it was like amazing. For those of you who have never heard about it, I definitely propose to check Wolf Jet Music. It was a Garden of Pain song, so
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I listened to it several times, like one by one, and yeah, that's why I wanted to ask you whether you sing. And I've heard once you saying hello in one of those on one of your videos, and it was like very singing, manner. So that's why I'm really curious whether you sing. Like you told that not a lot, but whether you sing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if I had gone to, I actually went to singing lessons when I was in my mid-20s. But yeah, growing up, I was the lead in the school play in elementary school, and which meant I was playing. And this year, I played the Little Red Hen, so I was wearing this like chicken costume essentially, and I sang a song about making bread and how people, need to all collaborate to make bread, but nobody was helping me, and so I ate all the bread myself, which feels like very symbolic. And I was obsessed with Judy Garland and The Wizard of Oz and just all the Disney songs and all of that. And then, in my mid-20s, around the time when I got Bruce, actually, and I was going through that really hard time, I noticed that it was hard for me to, in some situations, speak because I was so nervous. And so I lacked a lot of confidence. I was painfully shy for most of my life. And so I thought, maybe if I concentrate on developing my singing, that I can speak with more power as well. And I think it did help, certainly, to go to singing lessons. It was, again, a very humbling experience. There was a time where I was supposed to sing a cappella with the teacher. She turned off the music so I could just sing without any backing, and I couldn't. The sound literally would not come out of my mouth. It was just silence, and I just froze. And I think it's very symbolic of I think for most of my life, I have been afraid of my own power, the power of my voice. And that was like a big eye-opening moment for me. And a lot has changed since then. So yeah, there's just so much that gets kind of, I think singing is one of the most vulnerable things you can do as a human being. But it's beautiful when you can do it.
Yeah, and how did you feel at that moment?
I felt powerless, I suppose. It felt like there was something like stuck in my throat, if that makes sense. And there was a lot going on in my life. And I was in a very, very bad relationship with someone who was abusive. And I just felt silenced. And it brought me to tears because it was so symbolic of that experience. But yeah, that I've made it through that and can now speak and use my voice is part of why I never will be quiet from this point forward. So.
What helped you to overcome such kind of situations?
So I left that person and moved from San Francisco to Seattle, where I lived for about 5 years. And when I was in Seattle, I started to see this incredible therapist who introduced me to all these other healers, from yoga therapy to somatics to Reiki energy healing, which I worked with this Ukrainian woman in Seattle, and she was my Reiki healer and was just like the most calming energy and loving energy I've ever felt in my life. And I just spent years, like those 5 years in Seattle was a time of deep healing for me, and finding my voice. And I was, running a business while all this was happening, and trying to do while also trying to heal. And it was like a day by day kind of thing. And it's the kind of thing where you get enough distance from what's happened in your life that you're like, how did I ever accept that those things were happening? I can't believe that. What I did accept and what I allowed in my life, the boundaries that were crossed. But that's the learning. That's how you learn, is by looking back and realizing how far, you can come and you have come. So, I also did a bunch of like chakra cleansing, and that helped a lot. There was a healer in Seattle who I met through another friend, and who was a community builder there. And her healing was through like this natural energy that she used, but also through singing. So she asked me, when like she got to each like my ears and stuff, like, what sounds do you naturally want to make? And I remembered reflecting on that compared to what had happened in San Francisco at those voice lessons, and thinking like, there's still a long way to go, but I've come so far in that time. So it was a long journey. I'm still on it in some ways.
Yeah, I guess every person, still on this journey, because I feel it's sometimes too hard in our world. You may be powerful, but anyway, inside there is something that you need somebody to talk to. You need somebody to help you. And have you ever met some fake healers?
Fake, like just
like they trying to heal, but they just fake it.
I'm sure that I have. There was a time where I was hanging out with a lot of people who were, good vibes, like only positive energy, no negative energy. I can't have that in my life. Like, you lower my vibration. And so, I think those people are well-intentioned, but I'm sure there have been people that certainly, and also people that wield their healing as a type of way of getting power, certainly, and like allowing people to get into a very vulnerable place and then taking advantage of them. And I did have experiences with that in my personal life, not through anyone I paid to do anything, but yeah.
Yeah. Let's return a little earlier and talk exactly about your childhood. So Tell me more about it, and from what age do you remember yourself?
So I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and then moved to near San Francisco when I was about 5 with my brothers and my parents. And that transition was really difficult. So I feel like that time in my life is when I started having more memories. I don't have a lot of memories from Atlanta. Although again, I remember being extremely quiet. I was just a very quiet kid who loved books. I loved reading, which is, I think, I was talking with somebody, one of my friends and facilitation mentors, Daniel Stillman, and he was asking me, as a community builder, like, it's interesting that your best friends were books growing up. And so, I think it is interesting. And there's a lot to unpack there, but it was my way of kind of experiencing the world for a long time without having to go out and be in it. I moved to the Bay Area in California, and then from there met, my best friend, who is still my best friend to this day, 25 plus years later. Just really, California was an amazing place to be a kid. It was amazing.
Tell me if I don't know, why it was amazing.
My memory of it, of course, it was not this every day, but my memory of it was just sunshine all the time. And certainly San Francisco is not this way, especially in the summertime. But where I grew up, it's near this town called Redwood City, which is the sunniest place, I think, in the United States. It gets more days of sun than anywhere else. And so I just remember, like great weather, the outdoors in California, especially Northern California, is just like the Sierra Nevadas, like near Yosemite and all of that. It's sublime. It's beautiful. It helped me feel that I was a tiny piece of a much larger world. And my father, he's the one that got me into backpacking and hiking and things like that, would always take us on camping trips and things like that. So I was very connected to the outdoors too, growing up. In the ocean, I still feel very connected to the Pacific Ocean. I miss it a lot, a lot.
What story can you tell about one of your backpacking trips?
There's a lot, so I'm trying to figure out which one. It's interesting because I guess the stories that come from backpacking trips it's such a quiet time when you're backpacking. Like there's no phones, like there's no lights, nothing. And so it's actually like, I'm not sure what stories to tell, because when you're experiencing it, you are so in nature and you realize how powerless you are to nature. Whether that means that, the ice is melting beneath your feet and you need to be extremely careful when walking across it, or there's a rushing river and you have to like climb across a log and it could take you down and you could literally die. It makes life feel very precious. And then at the end of the day, I'm usually just so tired that I go to sleep, and then that's my whole day. But yeah, I think the most beautiful trip I've ever been on was that trip that we took for a week. It's part of a 3-week long trip that my father has done twice now, called the John Muir Trail. And we just did it for 1 week, but it was the hardest hiking I've ever done in my life. There was a day where I was so tired and so hungry and so sweaty, and there was flies all over us or mosquitoes. I had a full body mosquito net on because there were so many mosquitoes, and there were so many that they were actually getting through the net to still bite. And I just remember, like, we stopped for a bit and drank some water, and my dad said, we still have 2 more miles, so we'll just walk 2 more miles and then we'll camp for the night. And I just started crying. And I was like, I can't do this, but I did do it. And I think that's again, a very like humbling experience. I did do it. You can do much more than, I think we can all do much more than we ever realize that we're capable of. And human beings in their most raw element are good and do incredible things, truly incredible things.
Yeah. Have you ever afraid of such kind of backpacking, because you told that it's dangerous?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm afraid of heights, actually. And I tried like exposure therapy, where I actually I've been skydiving before. I tried to just realize it's not that scary. That actually made it worse. So I don't recommend doing that. I just remember the whole time thinking, I can't wait to get out of this experience. So yeah, there's times where you are walking on some really thin pathways and you are staring down at a cliff, and one wrong step and that's it. And it's terrifying. Yes. I've certainly been scared. I've been scared for myself, and I've taken Bruce on backpacking trips, and he got caught in this we had to take his leash and swing him across a waterfall at one point. And so we're like this little 15-pound dog being he had a backpack on, and he's going across this little rushing river and waterfall. So I was worried that we were going to lose Bruce that time. But again, it makes everything feel very precious. And I realized that our day-to-day lives, for many of us, not for plenty of people, but especially in like the Western world, Westernized cultures, our day-to-day lives are extremely safe and comfortable until they're not, right? And that's wonderful. I think everyone should be able to feel safe and comfortable, but that's not how most of the world, I would say, experiences life.
Yeah.
And again, I just think it's so important to feel that and know that in your body, and to know that you will be okay. You'll be okay and make it through.
Okay, so let's dive a little more into your childhood. You told that you loved computers growing up. So what were you doing on the computer? Like playing games, painting, typing, coding, your variant?
Yeah. I wasn't a game player. I've never really liked like video games or computer games or anything, but I discovered from a very early age, like chat forums, and probably much earlier than I should have, to be totally honest. Saw some awful things that people shouldn't see, but kids still see awful things on the internet that they shouldn't see.
Yeah.
And yeah, I discovered that you could talk to other people around the world. And that was fascinating to me, especially as someone who was painfully shy, because in person, I was really quiet, but online, I could actually finally have these deep conversations that I knew I was capable of having, but had sincerely never had with another person in my life. And so, yeah, I met people, discovered great music, stuff I never would have known existed. I did a lot of, like paint, like you mentioned, like art stuff. But mostly it was just talking to other humans across the world.
Do you remember your like first strange and nice chatting experience?
I remember there was one night where I was having a sleepover with my best friend, Lisa. And this was the first strange experience where this might've been one of the first times we really like dove into chat rooms. And Lisa was and is, she had a tough childhood. And we did all kinds of things together that like kids should not have been doing. And I remember just being like you could log into these chat rooms, and she went into like the over 30 or over 20 or whatever groups. And there was like discussions of sex and like all these things. And I was like, I don't think we're supposed to be doing this. Like, and then people start like IMing you or instant messaging you and saying these like things. And I just, I freaked out, but she was up till 5 o'clock in the morning, doing this. Okay. So like, so that was the first strange interaction. That's when I realized like, you have to be really careful who you talk to, and people are not who they say they are. And, I was probably about 8 when I realized that. And then my first good interaction was probably, there was like this, can't remember the person's name, but I don't even know we probably met in a chat room around music or something like that. But we spoke on AOL Instant Messenger for years, and we would like trade music recommendations. And like he introduced me to Muse, I think was like the artist that I didn't know existed. And I shared with him music that I was listening to. And it was just like a totally platonic like relationship. And again, I talked to him for years. I would never be able to tell you that person's name or their IM name. I have no idea. So
I guess that's how internet works.
Yeah. Doesn't mean it's not important, right? Just because it didn't last, or, the person still isn't in my life. It's still an important relationship to me.
Yeah. Have you ever watched a solar eclipse through the floppy disk?
Yes. Yes. I do remember that.
I still have somewhere floppy disk, so.
You do. I go to estate sales a lot. I really love going to garage sales and estate sales. And we went to one recently, and there was just piles of floppy disks, and the later ones too, not the floppy ones, the hard disks. And I was like, somebody from a computer museum needs to get in here, because this is fascinating. I bought a $5, do I still have it? Oh, yes, I do. A $5 iPod Touch which they discontinued
Cool.
at that estate sale. So yeah, I like to now collect kind of old electronic stuff.
What is in your collection? What more like stuff in your collection of old electronic?
Yeah, I have an very old Palm Pilot. My dad got me up because he had a Palm Pilot. He worked in tech, and then he was a tech journalist, and then he worked in tech public relations. And so he got access he would go to that big convention in Las Vegas, and I'm blanking on the name of right now, that happens every year, Consumer Electronics, and bring back stuff. Like he brought me my very first MP3 player pre-iPod. I had an MP3 player in like 8th grade. It could only fit 2 songs on it. But it was such a cute purple color. And I was like, this is the future. And then the iPod came out, and, originally you could put like 100 songs on it, and that was amazing. And now
you can fit every song currently.
Yeah.
Do you remember what those 2 songs were?
Oh my gosh, no. I wish I did. That was 8th grade. So it was probably like, oh man, I don't know. I was post Britney, maybe like Christina or something. But yeah, so I have an old Palm Pilot. I learned the Palm Pilot language. You had to learn a special language to write on it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I thought I was going to do with the Palm Pilot. Like, who am I going to talk to? I would use the to-do lists and the calendar and stuff in high school, but like, what a nerd. And then my father because again, he worked in tech journalism for years, and he was around like pre the .com boom, and then through it, and then the kind of resurgence after that. And then around 2008, 2009, he retired. But he has an original Mac book, or I don't know what it's even called. It's like the old square Mac computer, Apple computers, with the original keyboard and the original mouse, and the motherboard is signed by Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. And so he has it on display in their home. They live in Tennessee now. They moved out of California and back to Tennessee. And so he has it on display there. And my father like interviewed Steve Jobs, interviewed Bill Gates, did a lot of, just like loved tech, really loved tech.
Does this computer still work?
I don't know. It's not plugged in. So it probably does. I imagine it does. But yeah, it's really cool to look at. It's just like this big boxy thing.
Yeah. Okay, so in addition to loving computers, you loved horses. And as I told, you could jump on and ride a horse without a saddle. And you mentioned even in shorts. So do you still practice horse riding?
Actually, I went horseback riding recently. A friend of mine who's now moved, I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin now for graduate school. But a friend of mine here, she grew up with horses, and she worked on a horse farm just a little bit north of Milwaukee. And so she took us out to see the horses. And that was the first time I've ridden a horse in years. But it's like riding a bike, right? And just like the different personalities of the horses. It's so funny. But yeah, growing up, I took horseback riding classes with my dad. That was like a big thing. We learned Western style, never English. That would have been like the wrong thing to do for a Tennessee family. And when I was in middle school, he was like, you need to learn how to really ride a horse. Like, and so he took me to this farm, this horse farm in Northern California, and they would teach you how to ride without a saddle. And I had to wear shorts. So I wore shorts and had to jump on a horse without like any support. And I remember after the first lesson, because that helps you feel like the horse and what it's doing and all that, and get really in tune. I was covered in horsehair when I got done with this first lesson, and my butt hurt for like a full week. I was in so much pain. But it was also like, what a beautiful experience. Now looking back on it. But yeah, I could probably practice, but, get back to that again. I love riding horses. They're such beautiful creatures, such a gift.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned that you ran a pie bakery some time ago. Can you tell me more about it?
Yes. I always had businesses growing up, whether it was like a little lemonade stand, or I ran a tote bag making business called Fluff and Stuff Designs for a while. And then I worked in publishing. That was my first kind of career, was working in book publishing, and didn't pay very well, as you might imagine. And I also, though it didn't pay well, my hours were very like open, because when you're working in book publishing, the deadlines are like 4 years out, which is total opposite of tech, where the deadlines are like 4 weeks ago. It should have been done. So I would like finish work at like 4, and this is right around the time when Pinterest was created. And I would go home and sometimes I would stop by the library, get a bunch of baking books, and then, get on Pinterest and find like recipes that I wanted to try. And found also my mother's old like church and family church cookbooks that went back through generations in Tennessee. And I was like, I live in San Francisco, but this food from Tennessee, we could mold it. And so I would use like all California ingredients, but Tennessee flour. There's this flour called white lily. And yeah, I made a pie business. I catered like people's church functions. I catered weddings. I catered birthday parties, Christmas. Like I had a hairstylist who worked at, her sister worked at Genentech. And so word got around that I made pies in jars for a while. And she was like, this whole team at Genentech wants pies in jars. And so I made pies in jars. And I actually was about to, I was thinking about leaving my job in publishing and doing the business full time, because I was making pretty good money at it. And I realized I could make more. And I would be joining like a whole community. There was a big blogging community, food bloggers in San Francisco. And I just felt really supported by them. And yeah, that was a potential path for me. But then I got into tech, and nearly immediately I stopped baking. Like I could not do it. There was no way. No way.
You just loved tech more, or you just hate baking so much?
Well, baking is extremely difficult, and pies especially are extremely time consuming. They're a labor of love. There was a lot going on again at the same time. So my mother was my biggest critic. And I remember her, like, I would make pies and she'd be like, you could do this better. Like I refused to use Crisco, which is like vegetable oil essentially. And I only would use all butter. And she was so upset. She thought I was being pretentious. I'm like, this is San Francisco. Like, that's the whole point. That was another thing I was going to do, is go to this park in San Francisco called Dolores Park. And I was going to sell hand pies, just person to person, to people that were usually on drugs. So yeah, I started in tech. My mother's criticisms definitely made me not feel great. And then I started in tech, and I remember consciously deciding, like, I have to choose right now. And I was probably 24 at the time or so. And so 25. And so I just said, this is the time in my life where I'm going to focus on, making good money, having a stable job, all of that. Like, I can always bake for fun. And so, yeah, that's what I decided. And I was very passionate about my first job. That's the one I burned out from, though, unfortunately. Probably should have kept baking, to be honest.
Is your mother very demanding?
Mm-hmm. My mother is very critical. She's very critical. She's a Southern lady, by which I mean, like, so sweet. If you ever met her, she seems like the sweetest person ever. But yeah, extremely critical. And then, she has her own story. I've gone through lots of therapy to deal with this. My mother is who she is and will always be that person. And I love her because of who she is. But it was hard to grow up around someone very critical, constantly pointing out the things I'm doing wrong. I think that's part of why I was so quiet.
Yeah. I saw the story when you were having this lemonade stand, and SUV made a screeching U-turn and stopped across the street. So what can make you do a U-turn and stop?
Ooh. Yeah, and just to give some context there, I had a lemonade stand, and this woman saw us and then did this big U-turn and said to my friend and I, when I was little, I always promised myself I would go back and give money and buy lemonade from every lemonade stand because I used to run them. And I just thought she was the coolest person on earth. She was. But now what would make me, I mean, frankly, I do the same thing for like especially I have a really soft spot for kids running like little businesses. I was in Canada on vacation once and I saw these two little girls. They had set up this little stand outside of their house in Jasper, and they were selling homemade friendship bracelets. And they were just so cute. And I was telling my now husband, Dom, I was like, we have to go there and buy something. He's like, really? Like, and I'm like, no, we do. We have to support these little kids. And I bought a bunch of bracelets and, tipped them and all of that. So yeah, I think it's still the same thing, especially like little kids who are doing like anything where they're doing like community building or, creating things and, wanting to understand like how to kind of operate in the world, how it works. I've got a soft spot for that.
Have you met kids doing community building?
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, like the ones, at different ages, it looks very different. But like, for instance, I call her my niece. She's my best friend's daughter. She does stuff like now she's in middle school, but in elementary school, she would like put together these little groups where they would, like do arts and crafts. And they had this like slime thing that they did for a while. They made slime and they were selling it. And now she actually has a little business where she makes these resin keychains. And she came to my wedding and set up a keychain stand. And she's like, is that okay? I'm like, that's more than okay. Like, Marcella, like, go for it. So yeah, absolutely. And it looks different because their world is small, right? But then they get into high school and all that, and then they start, running clubs and doing like inter school gatherings. And yeah, I think it's really inspiring to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I noticed that you read tons of books. Definitely. How do you find time for reading?
You have to make time. You have to make time for it. Like there's no other way around it. And there's been times, especially when I was in my graduate program, I've been taking a hiatus for the last year, where I was reading so many academic papers all the time that I couldn't read anything else. I just wanted everything to go away. But I was reading like hundreds of pages a week in academic literature. So yeah, I make time for it usually on the weekends. I miss like being on planes because that's usually when I would read a lot. But yeah, vacation, all that stuff.
Definitely no backpacking.
No, not on vacation.
Okay, when did community stepped into your life?
If I trace it back far enough, it definitely started when I was a kid. Even though I was really quiet, I started a club underneath the stairs in my parents' home. I called the Cute Club with my friend Nika. And we would like gather all of our stuffed animals and have meeting notes. And I had like a little notebook where I would take notes of what we talked about. I have no idea what we would really talk about, but yeah, doing that. And I also like was going to start this nail business for a while and like just so yeah, I think I've always been a community builder, but it started professionally for me actually when I discovered that Pinterest was building community. I didn't realize that was a job you could do, especially in tech. And when I realized that, like, there was a community manager at Pinterest, her name's Enid Huang. I don't think she's there anymore, but she was like their 5th employee. And there was one at Lyft, Emily Castor, who's now like in public policy. She's amazing. And I was like, wow, I want to be just like them. And so I realized actually that the job I was already doing, I was working for a company called Chegg. It was a job that the core problems that I was solving could be solved by building community. So I was not hired as a community manager. I was hired to, help create this network of experts. But I started learning about community building and I was like, my goal is to create this network of experts who will stick around, continue to engage, be part of, what we're creating as a brand. And I was like, wow, I could solve this with community building. And so that's what I did. And then I got like the job title. I negotiated for the job title. I would go to meetups and like write up presentations and bring them back to my team and educate people about what community meant. And then I didn't realize this at the time, but a lot of people at Chegg had been hired from Yahoo because the CEO, who's still the CEO, Dan Rosenzweig, also an incredible leader, had been the former CEO of Yahoo before it kind of has done what it's done. So in its heyday, he was the CEO of Yahoo, and a lot of people came over and they had worked on Yahoo Groups and Yahoo Answers. And so they got it. They got it immediately. They're like, yeah, we did this at Yahoo. And like, I can't believe we haven't tapped into this possibility here. And so like the VP of marketing, and I had the VP of business development and chief product officer, like they were all in. And so it was a really incredible time because we were doing this cross-functional work together. I had a product manager who was dedicated to working with me, just listening to the things I was hearing. And then he would make changes to the product. And yeah, it felt like a rocket ship. It was really, really, really cool.
Oh, are you a perfectionist?
No, I'm not at all. I used to be. Absolutely. I used to be. But now I've done a lot of like research on perfectionism and professionalism and all of that stuff. And it's all made up. It's all a bunch of BS. There's no such thing as perfect. It's a product of white supremacy and like our desire to, get things just right. And there's no such thing as just right. There's no right answers to most problems. And yeah, perfection is a lie.
Yeah, I definitely feel it.
Yeah.
How many coffee cups do you have?
So funny that you asked that because I was like just talking about all my mugs. Are you like, how do you know this? I was estimating that I probably have like between 20 to 25, and I get them from like different trips that I take, as well as like, I have a Willie Nelson one, two Dolly Parton mugs. And so like my people that inspire me, I try to keep them as close as possible. So I drink coffee every day. I'm going to be inspired and remember travels and things like that. So yeah, probably 25 for between my husband and I. Like it's way too many.
Nice. Tell me, please, there is a cup. I noticed the cup with the octopus, moon, and girl reading a book. What is the story behind this cup?
Oh yeah, that's I didn't buy that one. That's from Dominic bought that one. It's from this company called Muir, MIIR, which is based out of Seattle, I believe. And they created this special art at the beginning of the pandemic that was the alone together stuff. And like all the people saying alone together, like we're in this together alone. And so it's a picture of a girl like reading a book on an octopus. Yeah. And it's a great mug. It's very insulated. It keeps things hot for a long time.
Yeah, it definitely great to have such kind of mug.
Yes.
I totally agree with you. I saw a very interesting phrase, like you can be a good person with a kind heart and still tell people to fuck off when needed. How do you feel when it's needed?
How do you feel like when you're actually having to say it?
Yeah.
Terrible. Setting boundaries is not easy. But it's critical to all of our work. Yeah. And for years, I did not know that. I thought I had to like everybody and that everybody needed to like me. And I learned several years ago that that's not the case. And you can still be a good person, and someone else can be a good person and still not be a good person in your life. They're push boundaries or whatever, take advantage of you, whether they mean to or not. And so, yeah, you just have to tell like it is eventually.
Yeah. And how do you find this moment when exactly you need to say this phrase?
I would say there's not a moment, but these days it's more of a feeling that I get. If I'm working with someone, it especially happens around work stuff, although it's happened in my personal life as well, where a friend is not who I thought they were. And yeah, it's just a feeling. If I walk away from every interaction with you and I feel like you don't understand me over and over and over again, no matter what I say, and that I just feel bad. Then eventually I try not to ghost people. I'm trying to be as clear as possible. Some people still don't get it because they're so defensive that they're like, I'm still not doing anything wrong. So I don't know what you're talking about. And those people, you're like, yes, I made a good decision. But yeah, it's observing what's going on in your body, and like, yeah, if you feel good when you're around them, then that's good. But if not, it's time to do something about it.
What inspires you in Dolly Parton?
So much. Dolly Parton is amazing. She's just like a natural entrepreneur also. But she just grew up on, pretty poor, actually very poor, and had dreams and loved singing. And like, just if you read her stories about how she grew up, it was clear that she didn't fit into small town life from a very early time in her life. And I think by the age of like the day after she graduated high school, she said, I'm going to go to Nashville and I'm going to be a star. And it took her a while to do it. In fact, she's told stories where she was making music, but making no money. And she would go into hotels and find food that people had left out from room service. And that's what she would eat. So she's just she's like had patience and strength. And just, she also manages to not alienate people. She has very strong views, some of them political, some of them not. And she's very strongly religious, which I am not, but I can admire like her dedication to it. And some of the things that she says are like, why would I ever do anything that makes people feel bad about themselves? So whether my political beliefs are, that people should have guns or shouldn't have guns or whatever it might be, if my opinion and what I'm saying and doing in the world is hurting people, I'm not going to do it. And so that's actually, she has a restaurant called, I think it's just called Dolly Stampede or Stampede now, but it used to be called Dixie Stampede. She took the word Dixie off of it because she didn't know that was, hurting people. And so she's extremely responsive. And just, her voice is like, that's the closest thing I know to like spiritual, like religious experience, is listening to just her raw voice. And she's also just super dedicated. She gets up at 4:00 in the morning and just like writes. And she's got that kind of nervous energy that like I definitely see in myself in some ways. And she's managed to really focus it. And then one more thing that I'll say is just that I still don't think she's ever called herself a feminist. I guess she did actually one time say like something about, that she wasn't a feminist, and then she took that back. But she always, after she worked with this man named Porter Wagner, who took horrible advantage of her, she became like the bigger star than him. And this really pissed him off. And he started being mean to her and never gave her a raise. I think she worked with him for like 6+ years and made the same amount of money the entire time while she was making these like amazing songs. And after that, she learned her lesson and always negotiated ownership of everything that she did. She got it in writing. So like, I will always love you. Elvis tried to buy that song from her and he said, I will perform it. And she got very excited. Like, Elvis is going to perform my song. And then his record label said, well, he must own it in order to perform it. And she's like, hell no.
What?
Why would I ever do that? And of course, we all know that song now, I Will Always Love You, was performed by Whitney Houston and the Bodyguard. And that's like what has really cemented her fortune. And then she gives that all back. It's incredible. There's a town called Sevierville in Tennessee, and she created Dollywood, and every employee that works at Dollywood gets college paid for. And she creates opportunities for artists that are up and coming in Tennessee. When there was a horrible forest fire in the Smoky Mountains, she donated millions of dollars and gave people money to rebuild their homes. Like, she donated $1 million to the COVID vaccine efforts. Like, I can't say enough incredible things about Dolly. She's just someone who has so much energy and has channeled it in such a productive and beautiful way. I just love her.
It's really amazing what you've told. And yeah, you communicate with so many people. And do you ever feel communication fatigue?
A lot. I do. That's just yes, period. I feel it a lot. Usually on weekends. Actually, every Friday night, my partner will generally go to a friend's house or whatever, and I will just be alone, and I just don't talk to anybody. Yeah, I feel it a lot. I think the Dunbar number is like 150. I think I'm definitely over that in terms of like who I communicate with on a regular basis, and so yeah, it's exhausting.
Weekend are the time for books.
Yes. Books, estate sales, like just quiet. Hiking.
How do you recharge yourself? How do you feel that I need to do this and this will recharge me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nature and music are definitely the two things. If I ever feel hopeless in life, I just go out into nature. It's been hard in Wisconsin because Wisconsin is beautiful. I live 2 blocks from Lake Michigan, it looks like the ocean. But there's not mountains here. And I always feel that going to mountains has always made me feel that, again, I'm that small piece of a much bigger puzzle. And so whatever I'm facing, whatever pain I'm feeling is just such a small thing. And I think that's a really important thing to remember when you're not feeling well. So yeah, that, and then, yeah, listening to music, going to concerts, going to record stores and picking out records, and yeah, just getting in touch with the basics of life.
I really wish to have the sky as the limit to our conversation, but time is the limit. Yeah. So let's jump to the rapid fire questions.
Okay. All right.
So, mountains or ocean?
That's so hard.
I know.
So hard. I'm gonna say ocean.
Music or books?
Oh my goodness. Like I have to choose one and I don't get the other.
You can do whatever you like.
Okay. So I would say if I had to choose one for the rest of my life, it would be music. But hopefully with books mixed in there.
What are your favorite color and song?
My favorite color is black. And my favorite song, oh my goodness. There's so many good songs. I mean, I guess probably Tennessee Mountain Home by Dolly Parton. What if I had to choose?
Cool. If you were passing by the tree of wishes, what wish would you add there?
That is really hard.
It's rapid fire questions.
Yeah, very rapid. I would make sure everyone had food and shelter. I would wish that for people, because then we could do amazing things together. I would wish that the leaders of our world would realize that we're stronger together than against each other, and that competing is a zero-sum game and it's going to lead us nowhere. And I would wish that Bruce could live forever, or at least as long as I'm alive.
Nice. Name 2 people whose community life journey you would like to hear, and who do you propose me to talk to?
I definitely recommend reaching out to Shannon Emery. She's incredible. And let's see, another person. Oh my gosh, there's so many incredible community builders too. I would love to hear more about Brittany Kochiara's story. worked for Webflow. Now I'm blanking on where she's at now, but worked for Miro. I would love to know more about her background.
Got it.
Yeah, those are my two.
Is there one question that I definitely should have asked but didn't?
Well, this one doesn't have an easy answer, but I guess a big question that I'm grappling with that would be fascinating to talk to with other community builders is community a profession? I am not convinced, even still, that it is a profession with a clear pathway. I know that skill set is something that is absolutely necessary in our world, but I am not convinced that we need a whole industry and profession around it yet. And if we are, the leadership has to shift dramatically. So,
yeah. It's really very similar to me. Like, is a singer a profession? Is a writer a profession? So it's like very interesting question.
Yeah.
And what do you think? What do you think? Is the community its profession?
I think it's really trying to be right now. The ultimate question is, does it becoming a profession improve our world in some way? I think the answer to that is yes. So I hope that it can become a profession with a clear pathway. We're absolutely not there yet. I think we're 20 years out. Maybe 10. I'll be a little bit more ambitious about it. But yeah, looking at, I do a lot of work with associations and have done, work with the American Medical Association and these really big professional groups. And one of my mentors is actually, she does like certifications and credential work. And we're just not there, like where project managers are with PMI or where doctors are, like we're just not even close. But they all had to start somewhere. So we have to get organized and there has to be consensus among parties. And right now there's a lot of competition, frankly. Everyone wants to own the community industry or the community profession. And that's not community building. And so we're going to have to do something about it eventually if we really want to take this seriously.
Yeah, we have a long journey to go.
We do. I'm excited to be on it, frankly.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Frankly, me too. So, Carrie, thank you very much. It was an amazing conversation. You are so open. It's even strange for me that you are so open. You was like a star, like a book writer. And
yeah, I know.
Thank you very much for giving this opportunity to get to know you better, because it was. I really love it. So thank you very much for your time and for your openness and for what are you doing in the community world. It's like, for me, it's super cool. So thank you very much for it.
Yes, thank you for hosting this. Fantastic questions. And I've loved being able to work with you over the last couple of weeks and continue to do so. So I feel very lucky to be here.
Thank you. So see you soon and have an amazing day. Bye-bye.